Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna say. Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of March 16th. And I am Michael James, still up here in the 49th Ward. And it's really always fun to bring on a very good friend and old pal, Peter Kuttner. We go way back to the Rising Up Angry days, even probably a little bit before that. Peter came back to his hometown of Chicago and worked with Newsreel, putting out progressive films. He's been involved with Cartemquin Films. He works in major moving picture world with as a cameraman, and he can correct any of the mistakes I might have made. But we're here with him today, as well as with Shelby Brand, who is the Human Resources and Health Risk Manager at Paramount Theatre in Aurora. And we're going to talk about a film festival that's going on. We're going to talk about a film by Haskell Wexler. We're going to talk about some labor struggles that are going on in the industry. Anything I missed, Peter?
No, nothing you missed, but in the terms of correcting things, I have a correction of cameraman for two reasons, and I think my emphasis on man tells you what the first correction is. We don't do that anymore. We talk about cinematographers, directors of photography, camera operators, camera assistants, still photographers. Man doesn't come into it.
Well, I'm really glad you did that, and you've always been one to correct me when I make big faux pas. So with that said, he's a camera person. He knows a lot about films. He wrote great film reviews for the Rising Up Angry newspaper between 1969 and 75. And Peter, why don't you start off? And Shelby, you can jump in too. Let's talk a little bit about the film festival that led to you all coming on. We're talking about the Workers' Rights Board Labor Film Series, which we covered recently, and we're going to cover monthly for a while to come. Hit us up with some info, Peter.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much for your kind introduction. I became, when I stopped working in the industry, I still kept working with the union because a lot of my political energy over the years went into my workplace and my union hall, because it, as we'll discuss later, it really sucks up your whole life. When you leave for work, you don't know when you're coming back. It's not uncommon. It's very common. The normal workday is now 14 hours, and it's common to work up to 18, even 20 hours. The union that represents us has been fighting this with the producers for many years. The thing that really set it off was in the late 90s, I believe 97, maybe 98, a 32-year-old man who had the same job that I had as a career at the end of a 90-plus hour week and a 19-hour day, wanted to drive home to see his kids. They were about an hour drive from LA. His kids were sick. He wanted to get home. He got about 5 minutes out of the parking lot at 2:00 in the morning, ran into a tree and died. There was a huge outrage, and the film tells us about this. And that's when long hours, which had been a standard in the industry for many years, came into the headlines. Shelby is here because she works with theater workers in the stagecraft department, they call it, of the IATSE, which is the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. They began in the late 19th century as stagehands in theaters. When movies came in, they put projectors in the theaters, and then the union became involved in movie making and the showing of movies with the projectionists. So the Workers' Rights Board of Jobs with Justice, which is a support group of labor struggles around the country. There are chapters in all big cities. Has workers' rights boards, which does hearings about these labor struggles. I've been on that board for some years, and I suggested to them that we do a film series starting in January, which we did. The film series is to address current labor problems, particularly in Chicago, but also nationally. The first one had to do with healthcare when we had workers at the Howard Brown Center on strike, both in Lakeview and on the South Side. The second one had to do with the UAW strike, strikes over the last year. And we're coming up on our third one, which has to do with the motion picture industry. Everybody will remember, I'm just going to say one more thing, Michael. Everyone will remember last summer when two of the guilds, the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild, known as SAG-AFTRA, of which you are a member, went on strike, and it was all over the news. Everybody knew about it. The contract of the behind the camera, behind the scenes workers comes up at the contract runs out on July 31st of this year. Negotiations started a couple of weeks ago, March 4th, and will continue to the 31st, with the union saying publicly if they do not have an agreement, they will not extend the contract, as often happens, but they will ask me and the rest of the members whether we're willing to strike or not, and threaten the producers with that one tool we have. And that's why we're showing the film now.
Let me just say that as someone who works not as often as I would like, but in film, I know what you're talking about, or observed these long hours on the set. And I just want to let people know that the film, once again, is Who Needs Sleep? And it is made by Haskell Wexler, and maybe we'll talk about him a little bit later. And it is going to take place on Wednesday, March 20th at Columbia College, room 310 at 1104 South Wabash. So with that said, I'd like to say hello to Shelby and get a little bit of information about what the Performance Arts Theater in Aurora is about, what you, as the Health Resources and Health Risk Manager at the Paramount Arts Theater, what that involves, and how are things going over there?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really lucky to get to be here and speak about this point, because not only am I working in this position, I actually worked behind the scenes for 8 years, doing wardrobe, so the hair, the makeup, the costumes. And then I went back to school, got my master's in public health and occupational safety, workplace safety, and found myself back in a theater, which I never thought I'd be at again, because in all honesty, you don't see jobs like this popping up in theaters where they're caring about the health and safety of not only the employees on the front lines of the production, but all their employees in general. And I was really intrigued and gunned down to go when I saw Paramount had a job posting like this. And so Paramount is in Aurora, Illinois, and we do have one of the, you may think about some of the large theaters in downtown Chicago, and we're the same size as that, as the touring productions. We've got a house that can fit around, I think it's 1,600 audience members, and we do large Broadway-sized productions. Right now, we're putting on Billy Elliot. And we also have a smaller, more intimate space, which is around 165 seats. And we've got an outdoor music venue, concert venue, River Edge Park, which can hold upwards of 5,000 patrons. And we'll be opening another smaller size theater this coming summer. And so as the human resources and health risk manager. I'm in charge of all of these spaces, as well as our employees who are working at their desks in the box office, front of house, etc. So there's a wide range of people.
How many of the workers over there are in the union? And just in all of the venues that you have stagehands, so to speak. Are they all in the union?
Yeah, so we have the stagehands. So those are the employees who are working to put up the set on the stage, take down the set between shows, as well as the stagehands who are working during every production. And so it varies the number of IATSE members we have working depending on the size of the production and how large a crew needs to be. But when we're in the summer, we also have the stagehands working at our concert venue. Additionally, we have stagehands who are working in our scene shop, building the set. So they're not necessarily there during the show, but they're there building the sets and working long. They're kind of different type of long hours, but long hours indeed, and slightly more hazardous work at times.
What kind of hazardous work are we talking about, and how often does a hazardous issue come up?
So if we're working in the scene shop, I mean, these employees are working with power tools, machineries that you would see in factory or large industrial settings, construction. They're kind of, if we're looking at OSHA, the Occupational Safety Health Administration, we're following guidelines under the construction industry for people who are working in our scene shop, as well as the stagehands who are putting up and taking down our sets. They're high up in the rafters. I mean, I couldn't tell you the exact height of our stage, but if you've ever been to a really large show, they're very tall prosceniums, and they're up there, whether it's on aerial lifts or climbing up ladders and stairs to get up to the top. And so we've got fall hazards, we've got machine injuries, you've got welding too, which is another hazard of its own. And then the hazards that, I kind of think Who Needs Sleep touches on, that a lot of people don't think about. You may think about, cutting yourself on a power tool, but the lack of sleep or the long hours actually take just as much of a toll on our health and are actually a lot more common than cutting yourself on a machine, maybe, because a lot of workers are facing those day in and day out.
Let me ask either Peter Kuttner or Shelby Brand, where was I going with that? I'm so sorry. We'll have to edit that.
I can tell you that there's a lot of crossover here. I didn't realize that Shelby had worked in theater, and I'll ask you if you were a member of the Wardrobe Union, which is Local 769. If so, they cover both theater and film. But more to the point was, we said before we went on the air, these rafters that Shelby referred to in the theater also exist in the film studios. And just a couple of weeks ago, we lost an electrician who fell probably 20 feet while he was rigging some lights for a particular production. I was quite moved by the union community that raised close to $100,000 for his family through the various locals.
Does how do you say it? IATSE, AITSE?
Well, there's various. It's
pronunciation.
IATSE is it sounds like the dice game, Yahtzee. VIA it's often called.
Is there your demands, the union's demands, or the things you would like in a contract? Does it currently address sleep deprivation?
Absolutely. We have been asking since that terrible incident where the young man's name was Brent Hirschman. We got together a petition collected 10,000 signatures in a few days. I know that I personally got over 100 on a film called Home Alone 3, which you never heard of. I've worked on a lot of movies that have numbers after the title. And unless the title is The Godfather, you don't get famous working on movies with numbers after it. But the film tells a story about how those 10,000 signatures of both what we call above the line and below the line, which is everything from directors and who are on the set, down to those of us who carry stuff around and sweep the floors and things, sign this petition. And strangely, it was lost. And the film tells part of that story as well. So every year we're trying to get shorter hours, put a cap on the hours. As I told you earlier, it was a 19-hour day for Brent before he died. The petition called for a 14-hour day. Eventually, it got pared down to a movement that the filmmaker Haskell Wexler got behind, known as 12 on, 12 off. Now, this is 100 years or so after workers died fighting for an 8-hour day. Here we are looking for a 14 to 12-hour day. So yes, it will come up. A key issue, looking at the other end of it, is how much time you get off. You're able to work 19 hours because you come back 8 to 10 hours after you've been let off. Your time starts when you leave. You go back on the clock as soon as you get back. That leaves you 10 hours or less to eat, shave, shower, look at your kids for a minute, smell them while they're asleep. They're asleep when you get home, and they're asleep when you leave for your next day. I was able to work out a plan that even if I had worked all night and I was sleeping when they woke up, they were instructed to come into my room, wake me up, and we'd have a little talk about what was going to happen at school or what had happened the day before. And luckily, I was able to go back to sleep. But I did that for many years.
Shelby, let me ask you, what would you say are the conditions at the Paramount Theater? Do you have long hours? Are you part of the union now, or you are part of management with the human resources and health risk management position you have?
So I'm part of the management and the human resources department. Peter, to kind of answer that, I was never part of the union because all the theaters I worked at, wardrobe is kind of a different world in some aspects in theater, and there's not as many theater houses that have wardrobe union, when a lot of them do have other stagehands in the union of IATSE. But I've been seeing that in theaters throughout the Chicagoland area, that's where I'm most familiar with, a lot of individual theaters have been trying to put rehearsals more back into the daytime versus in the evening to try to kind of meet more of a normal day schedule. But the problem doesn't only come in when we're talking about long work hours. It also comes in when we're talking about irregular work hours. So specifically in performing arts, you've got a 3 to 4 week period where you're maybe working during the day for your rehearsals. But then once the show opens, now you're working at night. And that some theaters are Tuesday through Sunday, some are Wednesday through Sunday. Monday is typically the day off. But I lost my train of thought. But
even young people, Michael, even young people lose their train of thought sometimes.
Yeah. But then you're shifting from working during the day to now working at night, and even the 5 or 6 days a week you're working on a production aren't the same every day. So you're not being able to have a regular work schedule, which is what we think of with the 9 to 5 work day.
How many union workers do you have at the Paramount Arts Theater? And is there any discussion you're aware of their concern with their contract and the upcoming negotiations?
Putting a number on how many employees we have is hard because how it shifts drastically, but and we also have a lot of sometimes stagehands or other types of workers that aren't represented by the union because you need to have worked a certain amount of time, et cetera. Then there's fees due. Sometimes people choose not to join the union or they haven't been working long enough to be part of the union and have representation yet. And I would say, depending on the number of productions, we could have 40 at a time, and it can go more or less, depending. I haven't personally heard anything about the upcoming negotiations, but when I was working in the industry and today, it's always been a conversation about the number of hours worked, the time between, especially because people who are working behind the scenes, they're not only working during the rehearsals and during our tech weeks, which is when we're preparing to open a show, but then they're having to also work at times when the actors and the directors and other people aren't on there to make changes or updates to the set or the costumes or something. So their hours are just extensive and keep expanding.
Peter, let me throw that back at you too about the hours in the film industry.
Oh, well, first of all, I'd like to point out a few things that theater workers are not working under the same contract we are, and the upcoming negotiations have only to do with movies.
Okay, thank you.
So we have this similar thing. In fact, a phrase came up was we start Monday morning early, maybe to get a sunrise. So we're out there even before that. And we work through the week, these 14, 15 hours days, going longer and longer, so that by the end of the week, and much of this is planned by the producers, we're coming in to shoot all night work and to work all night on it. So that you go to work on Friday and you come home midday Saturday. And workers started to call those Fraturdays. That the last day of the week was Saturday, and then that you'd repeat. So you'd lose a day of sleep, a night of sleep, and then you'd be back in for that sunrise on Monday morning. So it's abusive, and and it causes the danger of it. It becomes a safety issue because you start making mistakes at a particular time. And I don't want to leave this without saying that there is a possibility that there will be another strike in the film industry, which the first two strikes were devastating not only to the actors and the writers who were involved in it, but it was devastating to us too because there was no work. And people have, what I've heard, numbers between half down to a third of the workforce that are back to work since COVID and the strike shutdowns. So I just want to say that if and when we do go on strike, I really hope that not only the theater workers, the actors and the writers who we supported last year will be out to support us, and that the viewers who will be pissed off that they won't be able to see their shows will understand that once again until we get some kind of reasonable workday.
Well, both in
you watched the Oscars last night. Jimmy Kimmel did say they will stand beside IATSE if and when they have to go on strike, because IATSE stood by them between the writers and the Screen Actors Guild when they went on strike.
Absolutely.
Well, whether it's theater or whether it's film, the show must go on, but not unless there's a good contract. And let me ask, we have about a minute left. Peter, would you tell us one more time the name of the film and where and when it's showing?
The film will be showing on March 20th at Columbia College. Not a random choice. We've been trying to show our films in places related to the work that we're discussing. Columbia College is one of the leading film schools in the country, and the local crews in Chicago are full of film school graduates from the local area. In fact, as I understand it, you'll have Columbia College crews and DePaul University crews. It will be showing at 6:30 when classes let out, and we're hoping for a lot of young people to come to that.
Well, that's a lot of information. I want to thank you both.